All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Pandaverse. And we're going to have a few book readings and a little discussion today. And our first author is Christine Gabriel. Not sure which of her books she'll be reading from, but she'll introduce it, I'm sure. Christine's from Ohio, so I'm from Ohio too, but that's irrelevant because I don't live there anymore. But what will you be reading today, Christine?
I'll be reading from Crimson Forest.
Crimson Forest, your first book.
Yeah.
Yay!
All right.
Tell us a little bit about the book before you start.
Okay. Crimson Forest is a young adult, new adult, paranormal romance / horror. It takes place in Wisconsin, where there's a lot of hunting and creepy things going on in some woods. And basically it just follows the journey of Angelina Adams through the forest to find her father. And there's a lot of things that happen along the way. A lot of surprises, a lot of twists and turns. So I hear it's pretty good.
Yeah, you've gotten it's won you won a Buckeye something or other award.
Buckeye Book Award and the People's Book Award.
Christine has this amazing following of local high school students that read her book. And when I was visiting her a couple of years ago, we had the opportunity to go to a high school that's somewhere east of Columbus. We got lost on back roads between cornfields and everything. This high school's out in the middle of nowhere, but it's a huge.
We heard some banjos. It's pretty interesting.
It was my re-welcome to farmland, and that was an interesting day. The kids were awesome.
Yes, it was. It was a lot of fun. And I had gotten some fan letters from some high school students there. And instead of writing them back, I just showed up with bouquets of flowers and surprised them while they were in school. So they were really excied.
They were pretty much speechless.
Yeah.
So we gave a little presentation to a class of writing students, and that was pretty interesting. They were asking us all kinds of tough questions.
They were. It was
we gave away some books, and it was a lot of fun. And then we went to my old hometown and met my cousins.
Yes, my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, I saw you freeze there for a while. Let's go ahead and get started with your book then.
I'll just read. I'm going to read how the beginning starts. It is said that true love can follow you from life to the next. It's so powerful, it buries itself deep inside the soul, transferring to each new life. That fragments of men be lucky enough to find seeking it out, praying for the opportunity to be truly happy. I, however, am different. I had never given much thought to how I would find true love or that I would ever find love at all. I was more worried about being normal, as that was my opportunity at happiness. I wanted more than anything to feel as though I fit in as a regular member of society. If it weren't for the secrets that lie within the Crimson Forest, I would never have realized that being normal is for people who want to live in the comfort of their safe routines, who want to peer into the world with rose-colored glasses and avoid the truth. This very truth has taught me that fairy tales are real, and that there is such a place where true love exists, a place where past lives cross and happiness can live forever. That was the beginning. So the first chapter is titled Nightmares. Beautiful, I cooed as I ran my hands through the soft crimson-colored moss that crept across the ground and up the old oak tree I leaned against. The crisp, cool air felt good against my flushed cheeks. The light breeze felt like soft fingers running through my long, wild chestnut hair. The sun peeked its head through the tall, fall-colored treetops and hit my amber eyes. I smiled and imagined new freckles growing across the bridge of my nose, as that's what's happened to every time the sun hit at my pale face. I lay my head against the tree's soft, mossy coat and closed my eyes. I breathed in the heavy aroma of autumn and allowed the music of the forest to fill me. Every sound was magical, from the sweet song the birds were singing to the rush of water from the nearby river. Suddenly, I heard a sound that I recognized immediately, and my eyes flew open. A pacifying calmness washed over me like a warm summer rain as I admired the large white-tailed deer that stood directly in front of me. I remained still so that I didn't scare the skittish animal away. Its grayish-brown coat glistened in the fall sun, while its muscular body twitched in anticipation of my silent reaction. It took a step toward me, and I noticed something odd. Its large antlers were still covered in soft velvet, which was not normal for this time of year. I held my breath and slowly reached my trembling hand toward it. Its warm, brown, almond-shaped eyes stared at me calmly. I smiled, gently touching the sharp end of the antler with my fingertip. It snorted and kicked at the ground, its warm breath visible in the cool fall air. The magnificent animal's demeanor suddenly began to change. Its tail flicked up, showing the soft white color underneath as a warning that something was wrong. Fear replaced the calm in its eyes, and it reared up, letting out an aggressive, rattling noise. I watched in sheer horror as blood-red moss began snaking its way down the animal's antler, spreading beginning in the place I had touched. It spread like wildfire around the animal's strong body, and within a matter of seconds completely engulfed it. The deer fell to the ground and writhed in pain. "No," I yelled out as I forced my fear-paralyzed body to move toward it. I put my hands under its head and began to sob quietly. I felt helpless as it looked up at me with sad, unforgiving eyes. It took one last breath, and I felt its body go limp in my hands. "You did this," a female voice called out from behind me. I wiped the tears from my eyes and turned around, only to find no one was there. "What do you mean I did this?" I called out angrily. I heard a girlish giggle from deep within the forest. "You know exactly what I mean. All you have to do is remember." "Remember what?" "Remember who you are, Angelina. Remember who you are." Yay!
I gotta remember to unmute myself when I clap. It's a really really good book. It's entertaining. I don't usually like horror books as a rule. Now, having said that, I've read a lot of Stephen King books, and I've also read Nola's book, which I would consider kind of horror. I mean, there's a lot of horrible things that happen in it. But this book's different because the character Stephen is a vampire that adds comic relief throughout the book.
Very snarky. He's got a lot to say.
I mean, one of my favorite characters for sure. And I mean, I read this book, like 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember it. So, I mean, that's a good sign. So, anybody else have any questions for Christine? Yeah.
Yeah, unmute so I can talk.
I just want to say creepy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So creepy. Oh my gosh.
I like how it's like really, everything's pleasant and everything.
Yeah, and then it's like, and then it all of a sudden it's like plop, remember who you are. It's like you're having a nice day in the woods, and I just hope my next walk in the woods is pleasant, like all the way through.
Yeah. Stay out
There's
of
strange
Wisconsin.
people in dead here.
Stay out of Wisconsin and run away from red moss.
Yeah.
Is there really red moss, Christine?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is the red moss really a thing?
Yes, it is. It's real.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Red moss is real. We went hiking. My daughters and I went hiking on a trail, and we actually found some. I took a picture of it. I posted it online because I was like, there it is. So I was like, it's in Ohio. We should be worried. Like,
It's spreading.
it's coming for us.
Have you been to Wisconsin?
I have not, but I did a lot of research for the book because I wanted it to be in a real place. However, I do really want to go now because not only do I want to go to the place where, where the scene is set, but there's a lot of really weird stuff that happens in Wisconsin. And recently, they've seen like weird figures in the forest and heard weird noises. And I can't help but think maybe it's real.
That's interesting.
You're gonna go up there and hang out with Meg Bonnie and talk her into.
Yes, I am. Exactly what I'm going to do.
Oh, that's
I'm going to go in the forest with me.
That's cool.
Yeah. You can come too, Annie.
Okay, I'm a scaredy cat. I
I'll
mean, Nola
protect you.
Nash's book was the first like scary book that I read. Well, Laura Kent was the first like little moment of horror, little moment like with the scary man,
Mm-hmm.
the bad man. That was the first horror like that I got. Then I had to read Nola Nash's book.
Her book is
It
awesome.
was a Pandamoon book. Scared the living daylights out of me, but I love it. So
Sorry, Annie. I'm a nice person, really.
but I mean, it's such a great book. I mean, I absolutely love it, but I love that it's also wrapped around so much true history. But yeah, so that now your story is inviting to me. So, it ends up that I might love horror, and I just didn't know it.
Well, most of the horror writers I know are really nice people. It's just they've got this weird side to them.
You gotta get it all out.
Hopefully the writing takes all that weirdness out of them.
I don't know about that.
But there are a few people who would differ on that opinion that it's all out of the
Well, I think that's what's cool about these multi-genre books. They invite you to learn about genres that you might not have known that you liked.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that was I like mysteries, but I don't really I like watching police procedurals on TV, but I don't really like reading them as books because they tend to be a little campy. I think you muted yourself, Annie.
Oh, she might have froze.
She's talking, but I can't hear her.
Yeah.
Hey, Annie, we can't hear you.
I'm frozen.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there I go.
Now I can hear you.
Scared to read the horror,
Jeez.
So then I was like, ooh, okay, I can read Nola's book. So I did read Nola's book, and I obviously loved it because I'm always like, can I read from it? Can I read from it?
Well, I wanted you to read tonight instead of me.
Yeah, so I'm going to. It took me forever to figure out which part I'm going to read from, and I've been practicing.
Oh,
Yeah,
practicing.
it's crazy. My dogs are like, what are you doing, Mama? But, anyway, so that's the cool thing about that. So now I need to read Christine's book.
Aw, I'll send it to you.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, so yeah. That was a very good reading, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It seemed like at the time that I started with Pandamoon that the other authors, some of the other authors were writing police procedurals. So I read them. I kind of got into it, but like Jeff Messick's book is a really good book, but it's a police procedural, but it's paranormal. And I like paranormal books, so that got me into that. And then Brian Cohn's book, The Last Detective, is science fiction and a police procedural. And I love science fiction, so that what you're saying about things that are cross genre is really good.
Right.
I think that maybe in the past authors tended to stay in the structure and follow the rules of a certain genre, but somewhere around the late 80s, how that started breaking down, especially when people started writing urban fantasy and, just
Right.
really bending the existing genres. And it really opened up things for a wider range of ideas. And what I like about that is that you never know where the story's going. You can get down, 3 or 4 chapters into the book, and all of a sudden you go, where the hell did that come from? And then, if you're so inclined to go back, like I am, I want to see how the author actually did that, created the surprise. And you go back and you say, okay, it was hinted, there's a little build up to it, and I was just skipping over that stuff. So it's an art to do that, and to keep the person's attention, especially after doing something like that. It really changes the whole dynamic of the book. You guys got to stop me when I start babbling on. So.
Okay.
I like your babble. Your babble's great, Elgon. We love it.
Thank you.
I need to read both of these books. I haven't read either of them yet.
You haven't read Nola's book yet?
No.
Oh my gosh, how can you be part of the right review and not have read Nola's book yet?
It's on the list. It's in the queue.
I'm devastated. I'm devastated right now.
I'm waiting to read her next 2 books. She's got a new book coming out called Traveler.
Yes, I need to read that too. Yes.
Yeah.
Nola.
Hopefully that's coming out later this year. We don't have anything definite yet, but I think it's going to be a fall book. But that sounds fascinating. It's about somebody that's
It's a
kind
good
of
book too.
jumps around in time. Yeah, Killer Secrets is awesome.
That one's good. Sherry's book is great too. Yep, Traveler's coming out. You'll like that one. And it's a genre bender too. It's one of the reasons I like Pandamoon is they let me write what I want to write, not what I need to write. And it's sort of that freedom to write the story that is truly the one you want to tell. And I think when you write what you truly want to write, it's better writing because you're invested in it. You're passionate about it, and it comes through in the work. And I mean, Traveler, I always say it's time travel without the sci-fi because most people associate time travel. It's not Doctor Who. It's not. So it's very difficult to actually pin that one down because in many ways it's women's fiction, but it's paranormal and it's time travel and it's like, what is this? It's fun is what it is.
Is it sort of like Time After Time, I think was the name of the movie back in the 80s?
Sort of. It's actually probably a little more Outlander than anything else in a way. It's like a modern Outlander because what she's actually doing is, in the first book anyway, she's being sucked back into memories of her past lives, and she's having to kind of witness these moments in past lives to learn something from them so that she can take it into her present life to find her own destiny that she's been disconnected from, and now she has to go search out. But each of her past lives has something to teach her along the way. But different monuments, different historical sites that she goes to kind of sucks her back into these memories. She's not actually left anywhere. She's not really gone back in time or anything. She's actually just reliving these memories and then going back into that present timeline to figure out what she needs to do with this new knowledge that she's got. So the second book actually starts bending time. That's the one where she actually starts to move. But the first one is being pulled back into time, into memories in that past life. She can't change anything. She can't control anything. She has to watch it play out and physically kind of feel it as if she were still there, but she can't change it. Her job is simply to learn from it.
I always thought that would be the worst hell to have to go to if you believe in heaven and hell. That would be the worst hell to at the moment of your death, you're reborn again, and you're only an observer. You have to watch the whole thing, but not being able to change anything.
And that's what she's experiencing from that is, and she at first doesn't realize exactly what's happening. She just knows that, she's feeling these memories more than she should be feeling a memory, or, it's bizarre. She can't quite figure it out. But it is really frustrating to her, especially some of the memories that are pretty horrific for her to witness, knowing she did those things in a past life and she cannot change it. She's fighting that memory, trying desperately not to do what she's destined to do. And it's kind of it's a tough spot to be in, to know that you have to watch this, you have to relive it. Nothing can take you out of it until you've seen what you were supposed to see, and you can't change it no matter how horrible whatever it is that you did was.
Like
There's a lesson there. There's something you have to learn, and she has to learn it.
It's like being stuck in a rerun of a bad TV show.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Only, some of these things are the Spanish Inquisition. It's like not good places to be stuck in a rerun. But that one, it's fun. I mean, our main character there is very snarky. I always say if Anthony Bourdain was a 20-something chick, that's Shelby Starling. She's funny, she's sarcastic, she drinks away her problems rather than face them. And she just has this great job where she travels around the world and does not appreciate anything that she sees, does, whatever. It's just a job. Until history decides it's got a bone to pick with her.
So she's kind of like the Rocky character in Matt Coleman's book.
Oh, yeah. I loved Rocky because Rocky reminded me so much of Shelby Starling. I was like, okay, these girls could hang out and throw down some drinks.
Try to drink each other under the table and never.
Oh, and they would, and probably burn something down in the process. They get into a lot of trouble. Yeah, I love Rocky Divorce. That one's great.
That's another one. Have you read that one yet, Annie?
No.
A Rocky Divorce?
Oh, you'd love it, Annie.
You know who read that? Phyllis read that.
It's so good.
Yeah, she loved it. She loved it. Yeah.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's the main character's snarky. I mean, really snarky. She's got a very cutting wit. The way that she sees the world and everything, and she gets roped into investigating an old murder. Like an unsolved crime.
Yeah.
And she's a natural sleuth, but she's reluctant about getting involved in it. So there's that whole thing going on. And then there's
a snarky girl who drinks and cusses too much, having to investigate a bunch of junior leaguers. Hilarious.
Yeah, Phyllis read it really fast. She said she loved it.
Hilarious.
Yeah, she said she loved that one. She loved her. Yeah.
It is a book you can read fast.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yep.
It is.
Matt's a phenomenal writer.
He's just funny in person too. I mean, I haven't actually met him in person, but just to message back and forth with him and talk with him, he's such a wit too. So funny.
He was a school teacher for a while. Now he's like an administrator. So I think that requires you to have that sort of personality. All right.
I think he was a middle school teacher too, because I think we both talked about how weird you have to be a middle school teacher.
That is the age. Weird.
Matt's first book is called Juggling Kittens, and that refers to what it's like handling 7th graders. All right. Have any more questions for Christine, or any more comments?
I'm just happy to hear the red moss is real. That's awesome. That's like the highlight of my night. Thank you, Christine. I'm out.
Yeah, you always think that stuff is made up.
I like to be on the edge of reality and fantasies. Kind of make it, just wonder. Have people wonder, like, is it? Could it?
Yeah.
Now I gotta go find some red moss.
I know what you're getting for Christmas.
What's that, Nola? I don't know. It's a box of red moss. I must have had Christine as my secret panda.
Christine. That's funny.
Write a book where the red moss grows instead of where the red fern grows.
Can it have a happier ending, though? That's what makes me cry.
Yeah. My 7th grade English teacher read that book to us in class, and I was like, trying not to cry at the end of it. And I was like, oh my God.
Heartbreaking.
I never read that book.
Oh, you would bawl, Annie. I mean, it is so sad. It's a great book. Great book. You will bawl your ever living eyes out.
Yeah, it's more of a tear jerker than what's the other book?
Funny, I collect children's books and I don't have that.
Bridge Over Terabithia is the other one that you cry over.
That one is so sad.
Bridge to Terabithia. Oh, I know. And what is it with that time period and like our youth? We had to read all these just painfully ugly cry books. Then we had to talk about them in class, and there's like guys there, and you're trying not to cry, and that ugly cry.
Because
not cool, man.
Because the teachers, there is either the teachers knew what was going to happen to us later on, or they're just really sadistic people.
I think so.
So funny, Nola. She said there's guys there.
You don't want to ugly cry in front of the guys.
and the guys are sitting there trying not to cry too, but they're gonna like try to, yeah.
So funny.
All right. Well, Annie's gonna read something from Nola's book, right?
I love it when Annie reads my book.
Okay, I'm going to try.
Awesome.
Okay. No, don't feel any pressure because Nola's listening to you. Okay.
This is very scary. And please note, I am not a professional reader. I'm just somebody that read Nola's book that started reading it out loud to my dogs.
That's why I wanted you to read it.
Like this. Okay.
And the dog started hiding under the couch when you got to the whole.
No, they started watching. They were like, okay, so this is Nola Nash's book, Crescent City Moon. I think you should tell everybody what it's about.
Crescent City Moon is set in 1829 New Orleans. It is a French socialite who finds her father mysteriously murdered in his bed on the night of her 21st birthday. When she discovers his body, and she also discovers a voice in her head that is mocking her and haunting her. And in trying to figure out what happened to her father and what this voice is, she uncovers a trail of family secrets and family lies. And as she starts to pick these apart, she gets a lot of help from a very weird menagerie of people. She has a young police officer who's losing his heart to her, but also his grip on logical reality as he knows it. She has the help of the Ursuline nuns in the 9th Ward, including a medium, a young novice who's a medium, who can speak to our main character, Zéalie's dead grandmother, who came to New Orleans from France because she was accused of witchcraft. And there's also the Mother Superior, who decides she's done about as much as she can for Zéalie at this point and directs her to seek the help of a voodoo priestess who turns out to be her aunt. And so with all of this weird little group of people, she starts to unravel the secrets of not only her father's death, but also her mother's. Take it away, Annie.
Okay, so I'm taking it. I'm going to read the part from where she's on the hunt for where her mother is buried, because she wants to find out more about her mother, and she believes if she knows where her mother's buried, she might learn more about her mother's death. Okay, that's all I'm going to tell you. And I'm not going to tell you why she'll learn more or anything like that. But this is kind of good. Okay. Another eternity passed as the men inched the bricks away from the crypt. Cuts strategically pulled the brick wall, sealing the tomb out in as few pieces as possible. They knew they were just going to seal it again. As the first section was removed, Zéalie expected a terrible stench of death to come wafting out, but there was nothing. Hesitant steps inched her closer to the gaping tomb. It took all of her resolve to look inside. She had seen enough gruesomeness in the past few days. Zaoli wasn't sure she could take any more, but she had to look inside. They needed to see Soline's bones to know what happened to her. Somehow, Anjali knew some of the puzzle would be answered here. Zaoli held her breath against the dust and fear and peered into the darkness of the crypt. She expected a skeleton. She saw a rose. The delicate flower rested on the slab where her mother's body should have been. There should have been remnants of a wooden coffin and a skeleton. If nothing else, the intense New Orleans heat should have at least left a pile of ash after the wood and flesh disintegrated in the stone crypt. There was nothing, no sign that the tomb had ever been inhabited. The slab bore no dust, no more dust than the removal of the bricks would have left. And the rose bore no sign of age. It was a deep, velvety black rosebud, barely opened. The voice in her head that was silent since their arrival at the cemetery began a deep, slow laugh, dark and menacing. Fear shot through her like a bolt of lightning. Zaoli began to tremble so violently that Louis had to hold her shoulders to keep her upright. Anjali dropped back on her knees, to her knees in a quick murmuring prayer. This time, though, she hadn't crossed herself, but the others were too preoccupied to notice. At the sight of the rose, the grave workers fled, swearing and white with fear. "Foolish girl!" The voice boomed above their heads. Echoes reverberated off the tombs, scattered and terrifying. "And I had such high hopes for you." Zaoli willed and faced Louis, whose fingers suddenly dug into Zaoli's arms. Wide, frightened eyes told her Louise heard the voice too. Wind whipped around them, stinging their face with graveyard dust and shards of mortar. Tiny droplets of blood began to appear on the skin. They couldn't shield from the onslaught. Zaoli tried to cover her face with her hands, but too soon they were bleeding too. A cold sweat broke out all over her body as electricity surged in the air around her. "Stop it! Enough of," she shrieked above the din and roaring laughter whipping her. "Enough of this." Instead of stopping the storm, the ground began to rumble beneath their feet, and the maniacal laughter became a furious roar. "Don't you dare defy me, child!" Zaoli's hands flew instinctively to cover her ears. Cracks began to form in the sides of the crypt, shrieking across the smooth stone like a spider web. Yet the rose on the slab lay still and fresh, unaffected by the raging all around it. "You won't find your mother here," the voice snarled. I don't know, that scares the crap out of me when I read it.
That's really
Yeah,
good.
that's a good scene. You know,
That's a
you
great.
know what amazed me about this whole thing? You know, as much trivial crap as I know, I didn't realize that when you bury somebody above ground in New Orleans, that it's actually like a slow cremation because of the heat.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I didn't
It
either.
is. That's why the diocese has the mandate of a year and a day. Once the crypt is sealed, it takes, to make sure that that process has been completed by the elements, they keep it sealed for a year and a day. Once that time has passed, then that tomb can be reused. That's why all of those crypts that are above ground, while they seem relatively small, they can have 20, 30 names engraved on the marble slab in the front, because they bury everybody in the same slab. So they put them in, a year and a day passes. If they need to open it, then they do. Otherwise, they wait until the next person needs to go in. And then they bag up the dust. They, you know, if they had rings on, little bits of bone, anything that's left behind, they put it in a bag, they label it, and it gets pushed to the back and it drops down a little slot, and then the next body can go in. And they seal it back up again. The same process happens time after time after time, generation after generation.
And
Wow.
they do that because if they tried burying people in the ground, the coffins would pop up with water.
Yeah, the water table's so high that any flooding that raises that water table, and the ground is so soft, especially after any kind of rain. Basically, all of New Orleans is river silt. I mean, it's just not built in anything of substance, and a lot of the city itself was reclaimed swampland. In fact, about half of the French Quarter, once you get past Esplanade, it used to be Bayou St. John. It's just been reclaimed. So you go walking around down there. If you had been down there in the early 1800s, or late mid 1700s, it was still swamp.
Yeah, the city dump's still down that way.
Yep. So they can't bury anybody in the ground. They pop up. In fact, it happened after. It still happens fairly recently after hurricanes. They'll still find graves that they thought were buried in places that they wouldn't pop up, and then they do.
What creeped me out when I was reading the book and they were first heading into the cemetery and they walked past like the gate to go in and they heard the voice of the unsettled souls. I was like, what's happening here? Why are there unsettled souls? And then it was because they were the people waiting, the souls waiting for the year and the day to pass so they could be buried. I said, oh my God. I said, I'll never live in New Orleans. I don't want to wait a year and a day to be buried,
They have tombs that are specifically there. They're called the wall ovens, and they actually do make up the walls of these walled cemeteries. And that's where they put the bodies that cannot be put into the family crypt yet. Now, of course, they have to wait a year and a day, again, to open the temporary one before they can move them into the family crypt. Because the process still has to complete. So yeah, they have this kind of transient housing. That's the walls of the cemetery. And then they can put them in with the rest of their family. And then they can settle a little bit and find their resting. As opposed to
the last time I was in New Orleans was right after Katrina. It was like when the city was still pretty much depopulated. And it was really a strange place because I'd been there a couple of times before when it was normal. The bustling life and, the craziness of the French Quarter. Everything was shutting down at like sundown there. And it was because, when the federal government, when FEMA came in to, help out the city, so to speak, they were hiring people to, tear out walls and, all the buildings that got flooded, tear down buildings, entire buildings. And they were paying them like $12 an hour, which was really good money in New Orleans back then. And you couldn't find any place open after sundown because nobody wanted to work because they get a $12 an hour job during the day. So the people that worked at Burger King and McDonald's and places like that, they had to make $12 an hour and they only worked during the day.
Yep.
So that's the unintended consequences of the federal government getting involved in anything down there. But
if you're interested in anything that has to do with immediately after Katrina, there's a great book. I had to look up the author's name so I didn't remember. Chris Rose wrote a book called One Dead in Attic. And it is very interesting account of what they had to do to that city and how that city, right after Katrina, the X's that you'll see in some of the pictures that have numbers in them and different things, that was actually, a code for rescue workers and different people as they were kind of back of these houses that had been so badly damaged. And they would spray paint this on the front of the houses. And one of the things in the X's was actually how many were dead in the house that needed to be moved out because they couldn't get to all the bodies. They couldn't do anything with all the bodies. And so many of them were just left. So they had to know which houses had dead in it that they needed to go, so they could go find them, but they couldn't get them all out. And One Dead in Attic was, it's just a really powerful title for that book because that is something that would have been spray painted on the building because it would tell the people going back in where to find that body. And so it was just spray painted on the houses because that was the only thing they could do at that time. I mean, it's really, it's an interesting local account of that disaster.
it was really fascinating to me, just to see the differences. And you've been walking down, like I walked down the street between Tulane and the French Quarter, which is quite a haul. And that part of the city is fairly high elevation. It didn't get any flooding, so it didn't look all that bad. But the closer you got um, to the French Quarter, like the tracks that the trolley normally runs on were like mudded over, so they were going to have to clean those up. The trolley wasn't running, and you could barely find a taxi. The bus service didn't run at night, which is the reason why I was walking. But some of the areas that I was walking in New Orleans, you wouldn't normally walk in because it wouldn't be really safe. And I didn't feel threatened at all because there was nobody there. I mean, it was probably just me and all the Walking Dead.
I've always said there are at least as many dead walking the streets of New Orleans as there are the living.
Yeah.
It's just a very different feeling when you're there. You almost feel like you could be alone on a street and feel like you need to apologize to somebody for bumping into.
Yeah.
I was staying with one of my friends, and his house was actually in one of the areas that had some water, and there were, high water marks on the side of his building. He lived upstairs, and he basically said that, he got some extra soda and some extra beer and some extra cigarettes, and he was all set to the top there. And he was stranded there until the water receded. But yeah, it was a strange thing. There was one section of Tulane that got some flooding too down by the stadium, but the rest of the campus was pristine.
Yeah, and that area around the Garden District and Uptown is considerably higher. As you start getting closer to the CBD, the Central Business District, and the quarter kind of around Canal over there, it's definitely much lower. And they've had flooding problems there for a long time. I mean, and they still have flooding problems in that area. One thing Katrina did for them, though, was it forced the improvement of the pump system and things. So hopefully they'll never have anything quite that bad ever again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun place to write about. And kind of like Christine, I like writing about, I like mixing genres a little bit. And while mine's historical, it combines the historical fiction. And so all of those things that are true about New Orleans is, and one of the great things about New Orleans is the truth is often stranger than fiction, which is helpful when you write what I write. And there's so much more creep factor when you actually stay authentic to what is believed in the city. And so even though it's paranormal for a lot of people, the voodoo and just that magic in the city and all of that, the people there, I mean, it's as much fact as anything else. I mean, they believe that, they take it very much to heart. And so for me, researching that needed to be very genuine, and it needed to be authentic in the book to let the readers experience what people in New Orleans hold so dear. I never wanted to sensationalize it, never wanted to make it like Hollywood. It needed to be as gritty and real as the city itself, and that's what makes it special. And that's what I wanted people to see, because that's near and dear to my heart as much as it's near and dear to the people down there. And I had some great feedback from some dear friends of mine who are part of that world. I have a friend who is a medium, and I have a friend who is a voodoo priestess. And for them to not only approve of it, but also be enthusiastic about the book itself and say, this is a great book, I love what you did with this, then that to me is the highest praise that I can get, because I did the city and the magic enough justice that it made them happy, as opposed to, well, okay, but it's a little Hollywood. That I never wanted that reaction.
There's a professor at Tulane that teaches a class on the history of voodoo and the origins of voodoo and everything. And I sat in on one of her presentations to a class about the origins of voodoo. It was kind of like her course was compressed down to like an hour. And I mean, it was fascinating, you know, how it came from a blending of Christianity with a lot of you know, the Central and Western African culture being blended in, and you know, the twists and turns that it took in Haiti, and you know, all those cultures kind of got forced into New Orleans because of the slave trade. And you know, there was also a lot of pirates that frequented that area too. So
That's book
that
3.
you have all this stuff converging in one place, and it makes fertile ground for somebody to write stories, obviously.
It does. And I know, Annie, when we were talking one day, we were talking about the priest that's in the very beginning of the story is actually based on a real person.
Right.
Father Antoine is based on a real person, and the reason that the book is dated when it is because of him, because he was very dearly loved priest. But he was actually extremely good friends with Marie Laveau.
I know, that's so cool.
Yeah, they worked together. They worked helping yellow fever patients and did a lot of charity projects together. So what you were saying about the blending of the voodoo religion and the Christianity, it was absolutely, and still to this day, can be practiced side by side.
But you could tell that when you're reading the book, that there was so much realism to it. Like there's so much reality to it. Like you almost didn't have to ask you the question.
Yeah.
Was that real? Did that really happen? You almost didn't have to ask, because you knew that it truly happened, because it was just factual. You just knew. You wrote about it so well. I mean, I remember asking you the question and telling you, like, I knew it was a historical because of the way you wrote about it. Remember? So I just I love that the way you wrote about it, and how everything was so authentic. But yet you were still able to write this crazy fictional story around all of these facts. To me, was so fascinating.
But is it fictional?
Maybe.
I mean, it was just
Maybe
still, it was take such talent to be able to do that. And it was
Definitely
amazing to me.
for sure.
If an author can create sufficient disbelief, you know, or suspension of disbelief in the reader, to have the reader think that all this is possible, or this might actually be happy, or might actually be happening, you know, in the storyline of the book. That's a gift. I mean, that's a talent where you blur the line between real and fiction so much that the reader can't really distinguish what is and what isn't.
When you want to Google it so fast.
Yeah, did this really happen? You know, and
you know,
and I think the closer that you stay to what's historical, the closer that you stay to it, the more intriguing it becomes to the people, because you're dealing with possibilities and not pure fiction.
Yeah.
You know, you're dealing with things that could be open for interpretation.
I think Matt Coleman called it a New Orleans travel guide, but with murder.
right.
That's what he called it.
Yeah,
He's so funny. New Orleans travel guide, but with murder.
But it was also like a true roller coaster of emotions, because like the way that just went, you everything you start off reading in your head, very however you read, like kind of slow, the momentum, and then you just start you start reading it very quickly. Everything just builds up in your blood, like your blood inside of your own blood starts to boil as you're reading it. Like that's what happens when you're reading your book. And it's just amazing that you can make that happen to the reader.
Yeah, you kind of
know. Not
where
every author can do that.
You kind of know where the story's heading.
Yes, you know Solene is coming.
Right, you know where it's heading.
You know she's coming.
But you aren't really sure what's going to happen at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like I would say, oh, and I'd stand up because I'd know, oh, Soline's coming, you know. Oh yeah, it was serious for me. Yeah.
One of my students was reading it in class, and I knew they were getting to the end. And she's reading, and then she closes the book, and she turns around and looks at me and went, sorry.
That's exactly my reaction to it.
She's like, look, it
But
had to be done.
In the back of my mind, I'm saying, okay, it's part of the series.
Yes. I just looked at her. I said, did you read the epilogue? She said, there's an epilogue. I said, read the epilogue. So she reads the epilogue and she goes, okay, but
Okay.
you'll feel better. It was funny. But I mean, that's the reaction you're going for at the end of the book. Is so, oh yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where this one laid a lot of groundwork. But when you read the next one, I really get to play with your emotions a lot in Crescent City Sin. So hang on, Annie. It's
Okay.
if this one scared you, read the next one with the lights on, and don't come after me until you're done.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
Zara was reading what we call the final version of Homer Underby, you know, before it was being published. And I happened to be online at the same time, and I'm like going over the things that she's finding, little nits and you know, the typos and things like that, and I'm correcting them on my copy as she's reading. So we're kind of like text messaging through a document, you know, on and she gets to a certain point in the book, and she goes, I don't believe you just did that, you know. And I said, you got to remember, this is fiction and anything's possible, you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm going to have to get off of here.
All right.
Be safe in that weather.
Thank you. Is it heading your way? Are you guys going to get some of that weather?
No.
No?
Don't look for any deer.
Watch out for the red moss. Thank
Gotta
you.
get me some of that.
You know,
It's nice to meet you. Bye, Nola.
Bye, see you. Love you.
I just figured out that Chris
Bye, Nola.
has like this. Yeah.
Hi,
You
Mike.
know what?
Hi,
Hi,
Mike.
everybody. Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you. Nice to see your faces.
I figured out why you got the dent in the door from the deer. It was revenge for
Oh, yeah.
that deer in the book.
Mhm. That's exactly what it is.
Little karma there in the magic world. See.
Man. All right. Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Bye. You
Bye,
too.
love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Mike, you have got the coolest room. I know I tell you that every time we're on here, but man,
Aw,
that
thank
ceiling
you.
just rocks. I love it. It's so beautiful.
thank you. I love my place. It's so much fun. I love all the crazy lights too. It's fun to create a little environment.
It's just awesome. I love it. I'm all about atmosphere, and you've nailed it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's a very Southern California motif in that room.
It is. You're talking about the red and blue lights, like the police sirens chasing us.
Exactly. Inside.
You did live here. You know what it's like. You know what's up.
You're in Oakland.
No, I'm in a really quiet little sleepy suburb called Rancho Cucamonga. Which
What a
is,
great name.
That sounds like a
it
fictional
sounds
name.
totally fake, doesn't
Right,
it?
Annie?
sounds
It
fake.
should totally be in a book. Who's not written a book about Rancho Cucamonga yet?
Better
Every-
get on that.
Everything.
Get on that, Mike.
Everything in Southern California is fictional, though.
Right? You turn on the lights, this looks like a dive bar. No, I'm just kidding. My house is beautiful.
Not Mike's house. No.
Not my house. It's beautiful, yes.
I've seen those pictures when you were redoing things. Those pictures you posted online were gorgeous. I was like,
Aw,
oh,
thank
he's
you.
a fabulous voiceover guy, but dude could be side hustling with interior design.
Thank you. It's my first place of my own that I've ever decorated. I was, this is a weird sob story, but 2 years ago I got divorced, and at the time I thought, am I ever gonna live anyplace beautiful again? And so I made it my mission to learn to decorate, and I looked at magazines and read articles and I watched videos, and then I decorated, and I felt like, hell yeah, I did it.
You did.
That's
I love it.
awesome.
It's
Great.
I'm learning how to bake cakes, and so far it's not going that great, but I'm gonna get there.
Oh, I think it's
Homemade bake looks great.
Yeah, too much baking soda, it doesn't taste that great, but the frosting, look out, you guys.
As long as the frosting's good.
I was eating the frosting on saltine crackers. It's that good.
I can cook spaghetti and make omelets, and I'm okay.
I can't make an omelet. They come out terrible.
I'm okay with that. It's because you either make it too thin or you make it too thick. I mean, that's the problem. It has to be exactly right.
That's true. Annie, it's great to see you here.
Oh, thank you. Nice to see you, Mike. Nice to see you.
Yeah, we didn't mention that you're back from about with the human malware.
I love that. That's a great way to think of it.
Yeah.
Annie's been rebooted.
Right, Annie 2.0.
Yeah.
So, Mike, are you going to do a reading for us, or are you just hanging out?
I'm doing a reading. I want to read a little section of PHAETHON for you guys.
Ooh, I love that book.
PHAETHON's fun. I'm dealing with a little bit of food poisoning, so I had to pick something that was not too crazy. So
Is it
PHAETHON keeps the book.
is it from the frosting on the crackers, Mike?
No, I honestly think it's from a bunch of vegetables that I ate. I bought vegetables in the grocery store a week ago, and I hadn't eaten them all. So yesterday I made a bunch and ate them, but I like my vegetables raw. I don't like them cooked too much, like salami stuff. And so this morning was very unpleasant, and it's lingered throughout the day. I won't get into any details.
I'm
but
sorry.
That's okay. It's been a banana rice kind of day. But I'm
Glad
here.
you're
Damn
feeling
it.
better.
I'm gonna read and have fun anyway.
Good.
Okay. Do you wanna set up the story?
I will. So I won't give away kind of the plot, but I would like to do a little lead in about where we're starting. So what is happening is the main characters, Jack and Rosie. Rosie's really good with computer hardware. She likes to tear things apart and rebuild it, find out how it works, design custom fixes for things and sell it online. And Jack is a programmer, and he likes to go ahead and write custom software and firmware for different hardware pieces that he also sells online. And so they are going to the grand opening of this technology company that is launching a brand new cell phone. It'd be kind of like if a company that you never heard of launched a cell phone with a huge marketing campaign, and you went and stood in line for hours. You get inside the shop, there's no products, there's no phones on the shelves, there's no signage, nothing at all, no furniture, no seating or anything. These guys are standing around for upwards of an hour, and then finally they get led into the auditorium, and that's where we are. PHAETHON is all about a technological breakthrough that has stunning ramifications behind the scenes that nobody sees coming and that I will not ruin in this preview. But that's where we are here. They just waited in line for over an hour. They're exhausted, they're tired, everybody is grumpy, and they haven't seen anything about this phone release. So here we go. Wedged through the rounded door with the rest of the crowd, Jack and Rosie found rows and rows of uniform, recognizable, old-fashioned theater chairs. Each person was sinking immediately into the nearest cushion, relief and gratitude on their faces for this return to furnishing sanity. Jack gravitated toward the farthest corner in the back. Rosie followed. The place for people like them had been well established since high school, and some things a person never outgrew. They settled down in the dark and obscurity. All around them, people looked for pamphlets to rustle or gift bags full of junk to paw through. A balding man with a Bluetooth earpiece on leaned all the way under his chair. Rosie pointed him out to Jack. If he looks any harder for the free goodies, he's going to stick his head up his own ass. Jack failed to respond. She looked over at him in the near dark. He hadn't noticed her subtle pointing. He was too busy stuffing his hands into the crevices of the chair, looking for his own free junk ration. Rosie rolled her eyes at him and laid a comforting hand on his leg. Don't worry, hon. You'll get your new toy soon. He harumphed and crossed his arms. A collective grumble was rising in the dim auditorium. Don't know how to handle a release, the mob said. Unprepared. Mistreating customers. Stupid thing is probably still in beta. It'll be full of bugs. A blogger pulled out his current phone to start venting wrath immediately. The lights disappeared. Silence fell. The last electronic devices were turned off. They waited. Rosie tried very hard to sit still. Finally, Jack's voice came low and grumbling from her left. This is probably a gas chamber. Then the lights came up on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the ultimate goal in the advance of personal consumer technology? To have a single device that does everything. Existing devices on the market started off as telephones and added one feature at a time. A clock, a camera, a calendar. In a world where we have waited too long for our flying cars and robot maids, we are expected to be excited about a calculator that can also play videos, because that was the American dream, right? The man on stage paused for the obligatory laugh. Like the desk clerk, he was bland. He had black hair, dark skin, dark eyes, and no feature that would stick in the long-term memory. When he smiled, he became a stock photo of happy businessman pitching good product. His teeth were too perfect. Rosie scrunched up her face, but knowing that the prize was coming, the excitement had started to infect her as well. She crossed her legs and bounced her foot in the air. The announcer disassembled his contractual smile and continued. Today, I will be introducing you to the PHAETHON. Yes, it is a phone. It can browse the internet, play games, and has the best digital camera on the market. I could tell you about these things at great length, but we have more important features to cover here today. So I will ask that you please visit our website for any specifications not covered in this presentation. PHAETHON. He looked over his shoulder, waiting for something to come out of the dark. At first, Rosie saw the flying object on the edges of the spotlight and thought a bat had gotten into the auditorium. Then it came to hover over the announcer's shoulder. The next label for it that surfaced in her mind was metal hummingbird. But soon her brain caught up to her eyes. Hovering on stage was a chrome fairy? It was about 5 inches tall, shining and smooth like a figure on a trophy. The shape was androgynous, humanoid, with dragonfly wings beating madly on its back and possessing perfect stability. Except for the wings, it appeared to be one piece. Arms were shaped to the sides, the legs were fused together. From this distance, Rosie could not have distinguished fingers or toes, but she suspected it didn't have any. The eyes were a deviation in light instead of shape. 2 faint glows in the tiny silvery face. As she squinted at them, trying to see more detail, the lights flashed off and on again. She leaned into Jack. Did it just blink? I don't know. What? Rosie was beginning to suspect that all their speculation about this device may be streaming out the non-existent windows. The announcer took several steps forward on the stage, and the PHAETHON hovered after him. The crowd was leaning further and further forward. Rosie could see the shadows of a new line of people joining the stage, each with a small pair of glowing eyes over their shoulders. The announcer spun on his heel, ending up facing the audience again in a surprisingly flashy pose that made Rosie think he needed a top hat and cane. The PHAETHON followed him perfectly through the turn. He took one more step forward and it followed him again. For starters, he said, you'll never lose your phone again. The audience laughed, but this time it wasn't because of the implied social contract. There was surprise in this laugh and maybe a little nervousness. Still, they leaned ever further forward. Rosie realized that she was leaning with them and sat back in her seat out of sheer contrariness. She wouldn't be a sheep, no matter how green the grass looked. The announcer glanced in her direction, but launched back into his script without pause. You will also never charge the battery again. The PHAETHON contains one battery that will last for the rest of your lifetime. This technology has been in development for the last 10 years, and in this device, it is commercially available for the first time. PHAETHON, screen mode, please. The chrome fairy spun around, clicked open like a Venus flytrap, and fell into the announcer's hand, displaying a square screen with rounded edges like any other phone. Several members of the audience squeaked in surprise. PHAETHON, call the members of this audience. Nothing happened. Okay, Rosie said to Jack. Somewhere out there is a billionaire who's either pranking us all or hugely delusional. There's no way this thing can work. Well, they can't do that anyway. Similar comments at elevating levels of sarcasm snaked around the room. Then started to buzz. Ringtones slowly replaced sarcastic whispers. Rosie and Jack looked at each other, wide-eyed in the dark. It's such a fun story.
Yeah, I love that story. Without spoiling it, you've got to think about a high-tech fairy.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it without spoiling it.
Yeah.
But it's a really good story. It's pretty wholesome. I could honestly see it being made into like a Saturday afternoon movie or something like that. You know, one of those that the kids would watch, teenagers would watch. It's a really fun story and really unique in its concept.
Yeah, it is. Now, Rachel Sharp is the author. When she was reading this, she lived in New York City. I believe she lives in Vermont now. But she's a really good writer, and as you can probably tell from the subject matter, she's also a techno nerd. So, and I say that lovingly because I'm also a techno nerd.
Me too. That's why I love the book so much. I'm like, ooh, a new cell phone that can fly? Let me read more.
I'm just a few generations ahead of everybody.
The OG
My
tech
favorite
nerd.
part is you'll never lose your cell phone again.
I know, right? Can you imagine?
I'm like, I'm all in.
I'm in love with the battery. I hate charging my stuff up. I want that battery. I don't want to stop charging my devices.
I'm like, my husband needs to get me that for Christmas.
Once you read more of the book, you won't want it anymore.
Yeah, but the point is to get us to want it, right?
Right, exactly, totally.
There are problems in paradise.
Yes, yes, unintended consequences. It's pretty funny, but it's a good book. It's a really fun story.
That's fun.
So, what about you, Mike? Tell everybody what you do.
Sure. I'm a voiceover artist. I love doing audiobook narration. I'm on my 14th book right now, and I'm sure in a future one I'll share the book I'm currently doing. When I started out, I just did nonfiction. I had no idea I could do characters or tell stories. It took me about 8 books before I got the courage to audition for a fiction book, which was The Last Detective, which I read a few weeks ago. In addition to doing audiobook narration, I do quite a bit of commercial work. I tend to do somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 2 commercials a month, which is really fun. Some are big, some are small, just depends on what they are. I do corporate narration. I've been the voice of phone systems. I've done at award ceremonies, modules. I worked for Medtronic MiniMed doing their voiceovers for a lot of their diabetes software applications. You can get that on the iPhone store to work with their insulin pumps. I was the voice of Cal Spa's barbecues. I basically have voiced everything, like a talking trash can all the way up to you name it, whatever, a Japanese general. But it's a lot of fun, and I love doing it. It's a dream come true for me. I was a technical person before, and I'm happy that I'm getting to do this career here later in my life.
So what's it like having a talking trash can with your own voice?
It was the Janabel Motor Maid. It was a trash can you put in your car, and they had me do it kind of like a 50s. It's pretty funny. All the characters I get to play, it's just such a treat. It's unique. I get to invent them and create what I want. How I think, how is this supposed to sound? I'm deciding. So it gives a lot of creativity as an artist, and I love it.
So what's your favorite book that you've done narration for?
Oh boy.
It doesn't have, you don't have to suck up to us because we're paying.
Tip, honestly though, my fiction books are my favorites. Gosh, I fell in love with the characters. of Project 137 because they're so different and so creative and unique. I absolutely love those characters. But I think story-wise, my favorite is probably Into the Sun that I've done. I
Yeah.
love that story. I like the growth that the main characters take on that book. I like the way that Jake transforms throughout that book. He starts off as this kind of happy-go-lucky movie star jackass and turns into this really concerned, upstanding global citizen. It's quite a personality growth for him. And I really enjoyed portraying that and feeling that as him. It sounds stupid, but as an actor, we get to feel those emotions, but feeling his growth and feeling the way his worldview changed was really great. And I especially love first person narration. And in that particular book, the first person is the anchorman who's had tremendous loss in his life, but has found a calling through his own personal death wish and kind of come to terms with that loss and grief on his own and decides to have a better life where he can make a difference in other people's lives despite the hardships that he's faced. I think as an actor, having all those growth moments with the characters are what really made me fall in love with it. There's a lot of depth in that book. Plus, I got to learn, I think, 3 or 4 new accents, and that was a real challenge too.
Yeah, you did a good job with the accents on that.
Thank you. I think
it's
it
kind
took me,
of
I think, oh, good.
It's kind of a strange thing because I read the book before it was released, and
Oh, wow.
and then I listened to your narration for the audio book, and I was like, wow. I mean, your characterizations and everything are like spot on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was really impressed with that.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. I worked really hard on that one. The Australian accent is by far the hardest accent that I've ever had to do. I think I spent solid 5 afternoons trying to learn that accent before I could record that limited amount of dialogue. I think that character has
Australian accents are, I mean, it's hard to do one because a lot of times it comes off as being a cheesy British accent.
Yes, that's true. It's always a fine line for me as a voice actor to be like, should I try the accent? Is this accent terrible? Is it good enough? Is it enough of a pop culture reference that people will get, when they think Australian? Is that what they hear? That's kind of a challenge too, is sometimes trying to get it to be too good is actually not good for the story because a lot of accents are difficult to understand. And so trying to hit the mark of when a person who is not Australian or whatever, but from Boston or Irish or whatever it's going to be, if you're not from there and you're not really that familiar with it, you've only seen it in movies or heard it on the radio or whatever, try to kind of hit that mark so that it's still understandable, but gives that coloration of the character, but not mangling it and hopefully not offending anybody who's actually, from that province.
When I was at UT Austin, I lived in Texas long enough that I picked up a little bit of the accent, but not much. But I'd always lived in the Midwest, and Midwesterners kind of have a flat accent.
Okay.
So it's kind of neutral. When I was in school to learn how to be a news anchor and things like that, they taught us the Midwestern accent. I already had it, so I just had to shave off little bits of it. Some people other parts of the country had to work on, getting a neutral tone. So most of the people that are on newscasts across the country speak in a Midwestern accent because it's neutral.
Wow, that's interesting. It's funny that you bring that up. In my current book that I'm doing, I had to do a BBC news anchor. And so I watched some BBC News, and a lot of it, what I heard sounded like British people trying not to sound very British.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. When I lived in Texas, I went to UT Austin, and there was a student in one of my classes I became friends with. He sat next to me in one of my classes, and he was from Boston. So of course, as soon as he opens his mouth, everybody knows where he's from. I mean, it's not like a sore thumb in Texas, right?
Oh yeah, heck yeah, wicked smart.
And he didn't want everybody to know that he was from Boston, so he's really working hard on a Texas accent. and he told me a story. I told him just to give up on it. He is what he is, But he told me a story that his first semester there, he went to the store and he wanted to get, you know, a bag of pecans. And he goes into a small store there, and he asks, you know, he's asking himself now, how would they pronounce pecan in Texas? So he goes up to the counter and he says, where do y'all have your pecans? And the guy goes, what? He goes, pecans. He goes, oh, okay, yeah, on the top shelf in the back, you'll see them right up there. So he goes back in the back and he's looking around. He doesn't see nuts anywhere. So he comes back up to the front and he goes, I don't see them. He goes,
Oh no.
straight down the aisle, go straight down this aisle, look over a little bit to your right and straight up. And so he comes back up front and he goes, all I see back there is empty coffee cans. And he goes, well, what the hell are you referring to as a pecan?
Oh, wow. That's hilarious.
Oh my God.
Wow. That's a bit of culture shock right there.
Yeah. I was laughing my ass off.
Where y'all got your pecans at? Wow.
So what are you working on now?
I'm working on a book called Identity. It's a first author. It's his first book. He's the husband of an Emmy-nominated actress. So she's got, I think it's like 50 or 60,000 followers on social media. So cross your fingers, that one's going to sell.
Yeah.
But it's an adventure thriller book set in Florence, Italy. And in this book, I do an Italian accent, a French accent, an Irish accent, a Boston accent, and a Southern accent. And like any action story, people are getting shot and killed and they're in for a scene and then they're gone. So I've probably done like at least 30 characters or more so far, individual voices in this book. It's been a real challenge in that way, but it's a lot of fun. And it's my first thriller kind of book. There's a lot less character development than in a book that I would consider kind of an action book like Into the Sun. This one is straight up like a Jason Bourne, Michael Bay, blow stuff up and let's go spy and hide, that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun though. I just
all about the body count.
Yesterday. What was that?
All about the body count.
It's all about the body count. Yep. And in this case, some mystery thing. And I don't read ahead, so I don't really know what's going to happen. Every night, I'm like, what? I'm trying to figure it out. And it's fun because the detectives in the story will be trying to figure things out and walking over the clues. And while I know they're not really doing it, I'm doing it right. But as I'm voicing them and I'm practicing and rehearsing it, I'm like, what is it? What does this really mean? And how is this going to tie together? Like, I'm really interested in knowing how it's going to work out.
It's good that you do that because I think it adds authenticity to the characters and their
Thank you.
when they're speaking in the book. And
I agree.
That's one of the problems that authors have when they're going through and revising. I mean, anybody that's listening to this that's an author, and Nola can back me up on this too. When you first write the story, everything seems to be perfect to you. Yeah, and then maybe a week or two later, you actually have the courage and the nerve to go through and read it, and you go, God, this is awful. Then you're fixing stuff and fixing stuff and fixing stuff and tweaking stuff and tweaking stuff, and
that's the plight of the artist. I tell you,
this needs to be removed. I'm going to plot change here, so the ending's going to change, and because the ending changed, I got to go back and fix the beginning.
Oh man!
And
I was actually fixing things in Crescent City Moon when I was writing Crescent City Sin.
Oh my gosh.
I was so glad that I was still in edits for Crescent City Moon, because as I was putting things in that second book, especially when you're dealing with a sequel, sometimes there are breadcrumbs that you need to leave in the first book, or you need to tweak something. It doesn't work in the second book, so maybe it's just a slight little change that you have to make to tie everything together. I actually started writing Crescent City Sin, and Crescent City Moon I didn't write as a series. So I had to rewrite the ending a little bit. I had to tweak a little bit there at the end to make it a series. And I was really stuck for a while. I was like, how am I going to write a second book here? And then it's like, once I started the second book, like the rest of, now there's all kinds of ideas for things that can happen in this little world of mine. But as I was writing Crescent City Sin, I got so wrapped up in it and so involved in it, and it got a little bit darker and just then scarier. Sorry, Annie, but it got I'm terrifying Annie over here.
Poor Annie.
I realized that Crescent City Sin was a better book. And I said, I can't have that.
Oh
the
my
sequel,
gosh.
it's got to be good, but it can't be better than it can't outshine the first one that much. And so I ended up going back into Crescent City Moon and writing a whole lot more. And so kind of like Elgon was saying, and like you were saying about artists, the work is never done. I mean, that book is published and it's out there.
Yeah,
and
to,
if I read it, there are things I would still tweak and things that I would still change. As much as I love that book, it's never done.
You have to walk away from it.
It's the same thing for me, you guys. Like when I replay, like I listen to the books I record like a bajillion times, right? So, I mean, even now I listened to PHAETHON before I did this reading today. I went, oh, I wish I'd done that better. I wish I'd done this differently. And I go back like in the middle, like I've gone in and I redid it like half a chapter just the other day from one of the very first chapters in the book, because I haven't heard it in 3 weeks. And I started playing, I went, wow, I think I really missed the joke there. And this should be more dramatic, and went in. Or there's sometimes where I go in and hear it later and think that character voice is horrible, and I'll just do all that character's lines again and then go splice them in to make it better. And same thing. I had the same problem, you guys.
There is a sequel.
I can't believe you don't read the whole book before you actually voice it. I love that. I'm with Elgon on that one. I think it's going to give a lot of authenticity, but I would be so afraid. I mean, I did theater my entire life. And so for me, it would almost be like doing a show without the script, like having read the script.
Yes.
And I think that would terrify me.
It's so different. I'm like you. I grew up in theater. I did tours and musicals and, cruise ships and Disney, the whole shebang. And always, you read the whole thing, find out what your character's coming from, what is their goal in this scene, the acting breakdown line by line, what's your objective, what's the moment of discovery, all those things.
My motivation.
Yeah, all that stuff. And it is a challenge because I don't know what's coming. And honestly, towards the beginning, the first 4 or 5 chapters, I don't even know who the villain is. I'm like the reader. I'm just discovering. And so I do cheat a little bit though. When I run into a brand new character, I do it all on a tablet. So I'll type in that character's name into the search bar and it'll show me all the pages that character's on. So then I'll know, is this character a major character, minor character? And I try to click on some of the pages and see if there's anything that says, he's got a nasal voice, or he's always tired, he's a smoker, he grew up with a deaf mom. I don't know. Anything that would help me discover, like, what should he kind of sound like? He's a drill sergeant, he's hoarse, kind of read into it a little more. Sometimes I create a backstory for the characters that doesn't exist just so that I can get the voice the right way. By what I've had. And I always lean on my authors. I call my authors and, hey, or I email, I'm in this part of the book and this person showed up, and are they a main character? Oh gosh, the worst part, sorry, I'm just rambling, is that you'll run into a character where you only hear their voice because the author's keeping it mysterious. So you hear their voice a couple times. That happened to Juggling Kittens. Like, this guy gets jumped for his backpack and there's these kids and you don't know who they are. So I'm like, are these characters coming back later? And sometimes the author doesn't know. The book I'm in now, there's this hitman that kills somebody, and I talk to the author. I'm like, who is this guy? What accent should he have? He's like, it doesn't matter. Why don't you make him French or whatever? Turns out, like, I don't know, 17 chapters later, a police detective remembers hearing that guy's voice and says, oh, he's definitely Italian. And so now I have to go back, so now I'm going back and I'm going to revoice that hitman scene with him Italian because I didn't remember and it didn't say it there.
Unless the policeman's really bad at identifying accents.
Right, that's true. He is kind of a slob, so there's that potential. But now I'm going back and I'm going to record it. I'm sorry, go ahead. What was that?
Well, does he drink?
Yeah, he's a police officer.
I'm going to start drinking. But that's always a fun challenge where you're like, who's this mystery voice? I don't know. That's funny. But I'm the artist challenge, you guys. It can never.
But reviewing is the same way.
Yeah.
Often if there's a book that like I'm like totally in love with, like Laura Kemp's book, I've changed that review like 50 times. The way I wrote it, I feel like I haven't done it justice here, justice there. And then you have to go change it on all the sites, and then Amazon kicks it off. Like it's just, it's just ridiculous. But because reviewing is the same way. I mean, you're not writing a book, but you kind of, that's like your profession. If that's what you're doing for a living,
Sure.
And and you take it really seriously. And you're trying to give your thoughts in like this little packet. Except some people are writing like a really long book. I don't do that. So it's really hard. It's really hard. And then you're like thinking and thinking. And then you say, oh, but I forgot to say that. And it's really difficult especially when you absolutely adore the book.
Oh, I can totally imagine that, because you're creating too. I know you're reviewing someone else's creative work, but you're creating too as you're writing those pieces, as those reviews.
Yeah, you can't write the review right after you read the book.
No, there's some, I have to, there's some people that read and review and read and review. I cannot do that. I'm always behind. And it's because a book, I have to sit with a book, I have to sit. It has to be in my soul for a little while. You know, I have to feel it. And they're not just words that just come out of me. You know, they have to.
It's like you've been diving in the ocean and you can't come up too quick.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Literary sickness.
It's just weird. It's
oh no. Reality too soon.
So I'm always a couple behind, a couple books behind. Some people can read and review. I can't do it that way. So I'm always a couple of books behind, but that's why.
I think that's a great practice, Annie, and I agree with you. I think sometimes after I finish a book, it's like I have to just kind of soak in it for a while and let everything kind of congeal. And that sounds terrible. What a horrible, don't ever use that in a review. It's like the word moist. You don't want to say moist or congeal. Those terrible words. It goes out of your vernacular. But
because
you kind of have to let everything come together and really kind of go back to the beginning of the book and kind of follow that thread again all the way to the end, and kind of, because so much of it when you're in the book is you're reading, and this, coming as a reader, I guess, when you're reading a book, you're following that thread all the way to the end. And it's not until you kind of have that chance to kind of go back and think about it that you really appreciate how the author did that, how they brought you to that place, how they worked all of that, whether it was wordplay or setting or whatever it is that they did that got you to continue going on that journey with them. You really have to kind of let that settle before you really have a great explanation that you can give someone else, because until you really understand how you feel about the book and why you felt the way that you did about that book, it's very difficult to give a genuine review to somebody. And I think when you're reading reviews, you can tell in the reviews people who actually took that time to kind of just ruminate with that book a little bit before they dashed off a review. So I appreciate the effort that you put in, Annie. I really do.
Oh, thank you.
This is Zara. Kind of just wanted to chime in on that subject for a second, if you guys don't mind me butting in.
Hi, Zara.
Zara, you have to introduce yourself. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Zara Kramer. I'm the publisher at Pandamoon Publishing, and I'm delighted to be here with everybody tonight. And, what you guys were talking about, it's interesting that we've got Nola, an author here. We've got Mike, who narrates our audiobooks. We've got Annie, who is our cherished reviewer. We've got Elgon, that is also a writer, but is also staff at Pandamoon. And so it's like interesting to hear from all these different perspectives on what books mean to you and how they resonate with you and kind of how you feel, how they make you feel when you're reading them, and then how you feel afterwards. Are you satisfied? Does it stay with you for a while? Was it something you just kind of needed to go be alone with, like how I felt after the last episode of Breaking Bad, for instance? Some of these series that just really capture you, in multiple ways. And, I was thinking about my reaction. I have a reaction as a reader. Obviously, I'm first and foremost a reader, just like everybody else, but I'm also a publisher. And, probably one of the most important things that I do here at Pandamoon is make the final decision on which books we acquire that we will, bring to the market. And I'm often asked, what the process is that we go through as a company to choose. And that certainly is a conversation for, a longer conversation, but we're opening for submissions next week on the 20th for the first time in 2 years. When I first started Pandamoon, I wanted to be that company that was always open, that didn't have these closed submission windows. I wanted to be more inclusive. But the faster we grew, we really needed to change that policy, because I needed to be able to continue providing quality products, and we needed to be able to continue providing great support to our authors. So we've closed for 2 long years, and we're opening up again, and I'm very excited to see what's going to be out there. The books, go through multiple review processes. There's just big, a lot of steps, because we can get thousands and thousands of submissions during these open windows. And as much as I wish I could read every book, or even, our acquisitions team read every book from start to finish, there's just not enough time in the world for that. So we have to make some critical decisions at various stages in the book. And then once the book has been deemed, something that we're really interested in, we sit on it. Just like Annie, you were talking about how you need time to process what you've gone through. You need time for it to settle in your soul, and for you to be able to decide, is that a forgettable book, or is it an unforgettable book? And those are the only books that I want us to publish at Pandamoon, are those that really stick with you. And while I may not remember every detail of every book that we have published, because we started our back in 2012, so that's a lot of books. I remember how every book made me feel, every book. And there's this process that we go through at Pandamoon after the book has gone through the entire multiple stages of editing. There's this one last little step, and it's called the final. I know it's a kind of a silly name. I'll talk about why it's called that later. But in essence, what it is it's my review of the completely, totally, fully edited book. And there are times when I have finished that review and I have cried, because what I thought was a fantastic book, when we acquired it, I am just blown away by the beauty of it once it's gone through the entire process. And it is such a joy and a gift when I get to do those finals. And there has not been a book yet that has been published without me going through that one last review. That's when I feel it's just the most magical feeling in the world, knowing that you're releasing this baby out into the wild that so many people have worked on so many years, and tears and fears and you name it, all the work that goes into it. But it's just that to me is the ultimate best part of my job. On the absolute opposite end of that is the acquisitions, and that's this phase that we're about to go through right now. So
because you don't want to say no to somebody, because that's calling their baby ugly.
That is the absolute worst part of my job, is to have to send out those rejection letters. And I know that the people that get them, I just know how terrible it's going to make them feel. And for every person in the world that I have ever sent that letter to, I want you to understand the anguish that I felt in sending it. It may not be the same level of your anguish, but believe me, every time that
There's
let
a-
that email get sent.
there's-
I feel it.
There's an old adage. I don't know how old it is, but I've heard it many times, as many sales courses as I've gone through in my various iterations. But you know, don't take a no as a no, and you don't take no as a no in sales, because it really means not yet. And as an author, if you want to succeed, if you want to ever be a published author, you have to not only develop a thick skin about being rejected, because you're going to get rejected a lot. You have to also understand that no means not yet. That there's something that needs to be done to the manuscript. And maybe that's trashing it and starting it over. But it's not ready to be published yet, or it's not ready to be acquired by a publisher yet. And that's what the rejection means. So, you know, anybody who wants to know the secret to becoming published, that's the secret, as best I can express it, is you never give up on a project that you believe in. And you have to also realize that if you're reading a book and reviewing it yourself and revising it and working on it and working on it and working on it, and you're getting sick of the story, it's probably not a good book.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
you narrated a little book for us at Pandamoon called Project 137.
I sure did. I love the characters in that book. Oh my gosh.
Did you like that book?
I love that book. I loved it. I loved the characters, especially. They were so colorful and vibrant, and Seth made it so easy to create these fun characters because he's incredibly descriptive about them.
So let me tell you just a little backstory about that book. And I know that Seth has shared from his perspective the same story, so I don't think he'll mind. But this goes into play with what Elgon was saying when he was talking about don't take no for an answer. So I enjoyed Project 137 when Seth first submitted it. You'll notice that I said enjoyed. I didn't love it, okay? I did not love it. And I was like, oh, it's close. But what it's really missing is emotion and character development. And so I did a lot of research into Seth because I put it aside for probably 6 weeks or more. Could not get this book out of my mind. So I did some research on Seth Augenstein, the author. He's a reporter. He's a journalist. He was the editor-in-chief for Forensic Magazine before, unfortunately, it ceased to exist. But in other words, he is a technical writer that deals with very scientific, dry subjects. And so I did something for Seth that I have only done one other time, and that is offer a revise and resubmit. So I sent him a special rejection letter, if you will. It said, I think you've got something there. No, actually, I take it back. It didn't happen that way. He got sent the normal rejection letter, but I hated sending it. I hated sending that letter. He sent me an email and he said, I appreciate that you let me know that you rejected it, and you did so very nicely, but I think I'm just going to put the book, I'm done with the book. Okay. I'm just not ever do anything with it again. So again, a couple of days went by. I never really respond to the people that respond to my rejection letter, because invariably they're going to ask the question, why did you reject it? And then the one or two times that I've ever really answered them, it's gone into, it's not turned out well. So I just don't do that anymore. But Seth, the way he wrote it, I wrote back to him, and this is what I said. He said, I want, if you want to keep writing on the book, I think you should. And here is why we said no to your book. And that's because you wrote it as if you were writing an article for your magazine. You weren't writing it as a fiction writer, you were writing it as a nonfiction writer. The story is there, the plot's there, the characters are there. I just need more. He's like, okay, thank you, appreciate it. And I was like, I'll never hear from him again. A year later, he emails me and he said, okay, I thought about it. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go work on it. And will you really read it again? I said, yeah, I will. So he did. And it blew me away.
That's awesome.
Wow.
He knew how to write with that emotion. He knew how to develop the characters. He knew how to do all of that. He just was sort of constrained by the way he had been professionally writing for so long that he kind of forgot how to exercise those creative muscles.
Yeah,
And once he
had to
did,
get back into himself and turn it back on.
oh my God.
Yeah.
So in that case, that's a good example of don't take no for an answer. What if he had not sent me that email back and said, told me what he was going to do? What if I hadn't, I just think about all these what ifs that at any point in time, either one of us could have given up on the other one, but we didn't. We ended up with a terrific author, magnificent book. He's writing other books, and I'm just, it's interesting how, book magic can happen sometimes. So I agree with Elgon. Don't give up. Take the time to go to writing workshops, join critique groups, get beta readers, and read. That's probably the most important thing you can do, is to keep reading people's books.
Those critique groups are very valuable. When I first started wanting to narrate fiction, I joined a local critique group here, and I actually would read the author's work for them at the tables for practice for me, but then also it gave them a chance to hear it. And I grew a lot from it, but I learned a lot about the writing process through that, because I'm not a writer at all. And it was fascinating. I'm so glad that Seth didn't give up. That book is such a gem.
Isn't it? And it's just so, it just might never have been. But it was one of those books, one of those stories that I could just feel there was a diamond in there. And so when I was doing the final of that book, and it was just
That's another one of those.
that was like the Red Sox win another World Series. Let me tell you, that's how good it felt.
That's another one of those cross-genre books, Annie, that we were talking about earlier.
I love those.
It's a dystopian kind of science fiction in a way, but not really solid science fiction.
It's like
and it's historically accurate to a very strong degree, because it's based on stuff that happened during World War II. I mean, real stuff. Really
great, interesting book. You can tell by, like you have Nola here, in her book, has so much historical truth and relevancy into it. You can see as a publisher the types of writers that I am drawn to.
Well, Pandamoon has a Pandamoon book. I mean, you do. A Pandamoon book.
Well, it starts off with the cover, which Zara is very strongly tied to the quality of the covers, because she has the final approval on those too. And I mean, I don't think I'm giving away any secret that she's kind of a control freak, but that's a good thing for a publisher to be.
Oh my gosh, I try so hard, but these aren't just the author's babies. They're my little babies too. And I just want them dressed perfectly, and prepared, and yeah. But I'm just grateful that we have a corporate ethos where everybody's input into the projects is valid and listened to and is incredibly important. You know, it doesn't matter what part of the publishing process you're in. Everybody's input is really important in providing the level of experience that we want our readers and listeners to get from a Pandamoon book. We want them to know that, you know, while we may not have every genre that they love, or they may not love all of our genres, they might be encouraged to try something maybe out of their zone just a little bit, because they know the quality of the book that we put out. And so hopefully, you know, they will understand that the underlying theme between every one of our books is the complex layers of plot, character development, world building, and a level of authenticity of voice from each one of our authors. They might write in the same general genre like science fiction or mystery or something, but they all speak, you know, such a different language or sing a different tune, but they all sound so beautiful together. And there we go.
Our editors are really good at drawing stuff out of the authors in the creative process, and they actually become part of the final writing of the book without actually writing it themselves, because they're drawing more of the best out of the author. They can sometimes see things that you as an author overlooked, and they'll point it out to you. You know that here, you know, I thought that this was going to happen in the book, and then you go, wow, I hadn't even thought of that. And then it becomes more of a collaboration between the editor and the author. And now the editor is a lot more invested in the project because they contributed to it. And
let me give you an example of what Elgon's saying. I'm going to tell on Elgon right now.
yeah.
So we had Becoming Superman, which is book 1 in his Superman series. And when he first, you know, pitched the book to me, it was one book. And I'm like, you know, it's a little out of the norm of what we publish, but
which is normal for me.
But it had baseball in it, and it is a delightful story. So I said, let's do it. So he and his editor, who is Jessica Rhino for this series of his books, they were working on it, and I pinged Elgon. I'm like, you know, how's the editing working out? You got the book done? And he's like, yeah, but after meeting with Jessica, we've decided it's now going to be a trilogy. I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, we just brainstormed together and came up with, you know, a couple more storylines.
It took about an hour and a half. We were on a chat together, and we started throwing ideas back and forth, because first of all, I wasn't completely satisfied with the ending of the book. And I'm the first to tell you that I suck at writing endings. It's the reason why I write series.
Excellent point.
And the ending needed something else in it. So that's what started the discussion. And
I'm sorry, I have to go.
okay, Annie. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was nice seeing everybody. Bye, Zara. Bye, Alan. Bye, Nola. Thank you. Good night. Bye.
Bye.
How do I log out of here?
On the bottom it should say leave
Oh,
meeting.
I got it. Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Annie.
Bye.
So Jessica said that you know there's more stories in this that you could tell, because there's this thread here, there's this thread here that you didn't do anything with. And I said, yeah, you're right. I said, I was kind of like leaving that up to the reader to interpret. She said, well, it's okay as it is, but you could do this and you could do this. So over the course of about an hour and a half, we actually roughly plotted out, 2 more stories, 2 more books.
Wow.
And it's kind of funny because I don't normally write that way. I'm what they call a pantser, right by the seat of my pants. But then I go back and I look at what I've written and I create an outline and I move stuff around in the story, and it actually fits into an outline structure at that point. I'm not one of the people like, we have Laura Ellen Scott has like a storyboard that looks like, the thing that you see in crime dramas.
Like in Homeland, the boards that all
they have the different
everywhere.
Strings and pins.
they have the pins and the strings and everything going to it. That's the way she does her books. I can't write that way. I mean, I could write that way, but it would be uninteresting. And the way I write,
If something doesn't work, you just add some kind of magical being in to make it happen.
exactly, or plot twist. Something starts getting boring, you throw in a plot twist.
Everybody dies.
Everybody dies, and then they come back to life.
All of a sudden.
Right, an arrow.
And then you keep writing because you can fix all that stuff when you realize it. Don't worry about where you made your mistakes when you're writing it, and that's when you apply the outline to it. So essentially, what Jessica and I were doing, we're applying an outline to the first, but not only the first book, but also the 2 books that were going to happen later that I hadn't even written yet. But the thing is, I had some of these ideas that were kicking around, and in the course of coming up with what was going to happen next and what was going to happen next, I figured out how to end the first book.
There you go. Hi, Susan.
Hello.
Hi, Susan. Welcome.
Hey, Susan. I hate to do this, guys, but I have got to run.
Okay.
We are launching the new website next week, and my goal is so
It
you're
looks
gonna
great too, by the way.
tomorrow, all of the authors, all the staff, everybody at Pandamoon will get a link to the new website. It is not, well, it is live, but it is not live like at pandamoonpublishing.com. So
It's on our server. It's
yeah,
on
we're
our server.
Can't wait to see it. How fun.
yeah, it's the bookstore portion is fantastic. It is much more streamlined than what we've got now. There's a lot less kind of extraneous data. It is really focused in on the books and the sales process of it. I think everyone's really going to like it. We've got a whole lot more of different features that we're going to be adding to it, and I'll do a big presentation on it in a few weeks. But right now, I'm just trying to get everything launched, phase 1 anyway, launched before we open up for submissions on the 20th. I want to make sure that all of that's working. So tomorrow, everybody within Pandamoon is going to get a link. I want everybody to go to it and take a look at it. But Rachel and I have been working round the clock basically for the last, I don't know what, 3-4 weeks now at this home stretch, trying to get everything done for at least for you guys to take a look at and for us to go live early next week.
It's
So
it's a lot more responsive than our present website too. So that, I mean, a lot of the things that we learned from the present website have been fixed in the new one, and it is more focused on sales and more author centric, to introduce people to the authors and their various books, and allow the interaction between the author and the greater community of readers. So I think that's the focus of, and we talked about this back in December. And it was one of those wild ideas that we came up in our planning session for this year. And I'm really impressed with what you and Rachel have done for it.
Well, it has been, there's just so many back end operations that are required from the financial standpoint of, as a product manufacturer and, collecting taxes from 50 different states and all these different countries and, all of these things that our distributors have been taking care of it for us, and they will continue to do so for the products that are sold through them. But now that we have the ability to sell our products ourselves, we're going to be putting a lot of our resources into that and just getting all of our processes to talk to each other. So, but it's great. And
one of the great things is we'll be able to do pre-orders on print books.
Yes. That was one of the reasons, I guess, that really propelled us, is that Amazon just is not going to offer that as an option anytime soon. And we really wanted to be able to offer that service to our authors and for our authors' fans that are really interested in supporting them at launch, but really want the physical copy, in their hand. So anyway, that's all exciting news, and can't wait to start hearing feedback from you guys tomorrow. Don't know what time it'll be. There's a couple things Rachel and I identified late tonight, or before I came onto this, that we want to make sure we get fixed before we share with you tomorrow, but we're close. So y'all have a good evening. I really enjoyed our conversation. It was really nice. It's nice to hear Mike bring these characters alive. Now, I've listened to the audiobooks, but there's something about actually watching him as he's voicing the characters that, it almost feels like you're watching a play, in action.
Wow.
Really nice.
Thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's such a
You're
joy to do.
Faces.
I love it.
I like watching you do the faces.
Yeah, as he changes characters, his expressions change to,
He does.
it's really
That's so
cool.
crazy to hear. I had no idea I did that.
Yeah,
You do.
yeah.
So you should record your video of yourself.
That's terrifying. It's bad enough to have to listen to myself, you guys.
No.
I can't imagine having to watch myself too. Good gracious.
That's funny.
Great though, Mike. It's fun to watch.
Aw,
All right,
thank
Get
you.
so into it.
Here, bye.
Sarah.
Bye, Zara.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I think I'm gonna pop off too, guys. I've got to go take little man out to go potty.
All right.
Me too. I'm going. I don't feel great, so I'm going to go rest up. Great to see you all. Thanks for having me tonight.